Have you seen me dice bag? The Grognard Files.
Hello, my name is Dirk the Dice, and this is the Grognard Files podcast, where we talk bobbins about tabletop RPGs from back in the day and today. I'm coming live from my den in the heart of the northwest of England. I'm completely and utterly surrounded by my stuff. I'm still tidying up after the successful Grogmeet 19, where I picked up some new games. Pendragon, the new Eberron supplement for D&D 5th edition, and I've got Gamma World to add to the great library of RPGs and my Grognard Files. Whenever I mention Grogmeet to my work colleagues, they ask, "Do you dress up?" No, the same answer I gave last time. I'll write it down if it helps. Here on my left is my ridiculous homemade shrine to the actor Caroline Munro. I'll just give it a tap. The eternal champion appears as Naomi, pursuing James Bond in a helicopter. She's a killer, an assassin. I've got assassination on my mind as I've been reading Killer, a game of assassination, a live role-playing game for any number of players, first published in 1981 by Steve Jackson Games. And it's still available today from their website. There's nothing like the thrill that you get from wiping out a friend, according to Shelley Berman. Killer is a game that takes the competitive edge of Snakes and Ladders and moves it up a notch. A live action game where you're pitted against your friends to score kills with dart guns, confetti grenades and balloon bombs. For younger listeners, think of it as a live-action Fortnite, where the only skins that matter are banana skins. It was a huge hit on college campuses. Here's Gareth Ryder Hanrahan. We accidentally ran a game on the day that the British ambassador was visiting our university in Ireland. An international incident was avoided only by a barman, throwing himself between the players and the plainclothes protective detail and shouting, "Don't shoot, the fucking idiots!" Steve Dempsey says, "At university, I put a paper bag with eye holes on my head, glasses on the outside, and stalked through the canteen at lunchtime, and stabbed my girlfriend with a cardboard knife." Neil Hopkins, "We had a fantastic campaign of Killer when I was in sixth form. Assassinations included poisonous spiders in motorbike helmets, and electrified door handles, and good old-fashioned banana guns. If you tried anything like that now, you'd end up with a SWAT team on your doorstep." And it was true back then too. Here's Knock Harper. "Some old university mates of mine were arrested playing Killer in Manchester in the mid-90s. I think that's officially losing." Meanwhile, back in the Golden State in the US of A, Hyperlexic says, "Killer is basically how I actually met my core friends. I just moved back to California after 11 years of living in the Deep South for 7th grade. A friend took me up to meet his friends on the UC Berkeley campus. Most of us had tracer guns, which flung out little discs, but two had these little handheld pistols that shot hollow rubber bullets. We called those guns remote dildo applicators, which to the 13-year-old me, I found hilarious. Anyway, the Killer game mostly consisted of running around the halls of the various UCB buildings and shooting each other, until inevitably an irate grad student would start yelling at us or a security guard would appear, at which point we'd scatter. This group then introduced me to RPGs beyond D&D, Car Wars, Villains and Vigilantes, Champions, Rollmaster, Call of Cthulhu, Twilight 2000 were our games over the next 5 years, then later RuneQuest. They're still my best friends to this day. As it says in the book, essentially, Killer is a game of cowboys and Indians for adults. In this episode, I interview Jamie Thomson, who was the features editor of White Dwarf during its golden age between 1981 and 1984. He's the creator of the game books Talisman of Death and The Way of the Tiger series, and more recently, Can You Brexit? He looks back here as he reflects on the recent project he's been working on, The Dice Men, Games Workshop 1975 to 1985, and provides some anecdotes from the era. It was during the interview that he mentioned playing Killer a couple of times that was reminded of live-action role-playing, and I was in the mood for reminiscing myself. Regular listeners will know that this podcast was originally conceived as a memoir of our experiences of role-playing in the 1980s. In this episode, we'll lead you down a particular path of memory lane as Blythe and I have reached a significant milestone of our friendship. We reflect on our experiences of live-action role-playing in two parts, with our first, last and everything guest stuck in the middle. Shannon Ferguson, also known as the Angry Monk, was one of the first overseas listeners to correspond with us. He gives us a Canadian view of the first game he played, the last game he played, and the game that means everything to him. I'll be back at the end to bring you up to date with the current Grog Squad projects. Okay, Ramblers, let's get rambling.
Open box!
Welcome to Open Box, the part of the podcast where we look backwards to look forwards. I'm in the room of role-playing rambling with White Dwarf editor, fighting fantasy game book designer, children's author, and all-round creative genius. I've got Jamie Thomson with me. Hello, Jamie.
And greatest living human on earth. Actually, technically, I may not be human. Greatest evil overlord.
Well, it's great to have you in the room of role-playing rambling. And we always start by asking, how did you get into role-playing?
Well, I left uni in 1981 or something, and I remember opening my first Dungeons and Dragons box of 3 little books in a white container in about 1976 when I was about 15, and it completely changed my life. Back then, people kind of forget how utterly new the whole thing was and how no one had ever done any role-playing like that. It was kind of like wargaming with another level. So I got into Dungeons and Dragons and was doing that for years and became an ultimate 70s nerd. And then I was stuck at home looking for a job, spending most of my time painting a large Macedonian army, what they called minifigs in those days. And my mum got fed up with me being around the house at 20. What's it? I was applying for all these jobs and not getting very far. And she found one of my magazines, White Dwarf, that I read as a fan. And in the back, there was an advert for an editor at White Dwarf. Why didn't you apply for this? And I said, don't be ridiculous, mother. I know better than you could possibly know at my grand age of 22. There's no way I could just apply for my best job I could ever imagine possibly having in Games Workshop with no experience, fresh out of uni. So my mum, still sickened by the smell of turpentine and paints in the house, she rang up Ian Livingstone and she said to him, my son is a total nutter nerd. He'd be great working for you. And they got on really well and they had a long chat. And my mum says to me, I've got you an interview. Go up there and see the guy. I go, Mum, how could you do this? How embarrassing. So I go up and have an interview with Ian, and I get on really well with Ian, and I get the job. There's a features editor on White Dwarf, and that was the start. And then about 30 years later, Ian was in Brighton, where my mum lives, and he came round and visited my mum.
Is that the first time you got met? Oh, that's great.
So my mum got me my first job, and that started my whole career off.
So would that be at Delling Road that you...
No, it was just after. They just moved to Sunbeam Road, which was the big warehouse. And I had a large sort of office with no windows. And it was kind of like being in a little dungeon, which was sort of appropriate for... But it was like a dream job. You know, I spent all day reading White Dwarf scenario material and Open Box, the review thing. And is that why you called it this?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Excellent, yeah. And it was just so much fun. And it was such a fun place to work in those days. Of course, we got up to no good, but there were endless games of Killer in the office. Yeah, someone had written "baboom" on the bottom of the phone, and got ya. And yeah, so that was a lot of fun, and I worked there for many years. Not many years, for about 4 or 5 years. before leaving to do game books. So I came in when the growth had become quite exponential and it nearly broke the company a couple of times. But then I left just before the whole move to Nottingham, which was a huge change in the nature of Games Workshop, which is all covered in the book I've been writing, which I've sort of finished, Games Workshop the early years. So it's a history of Games Workshop, which I've kind of finished my draft, and now Ian and Steve are sort of going through editing it.
Yeah, and this is the one that you've done through a crowdfunding, isn't it? The Unbound crowdfunding.
Yes, through Unbound. Yeah, everyone it's like a Kickstarter basically for books, but they do a bit more than Kickstarter. They put an editor on it and they publish it.
So when's that expected to be published?
Well, I don't know. It all depends. These things take so long once you've finished the manuscript, and they usually go through several edits and before it actually gets printed and sent off to wherever it will go to be printed. And then, so I would imagine sometime next year. There's a lot of work involved because there's a lot of pictures, photos being put in. Yeah, endless old photos from the 70s and 80s.
Oh, that's good. That's good. So what's been the process of that then? What have you had to do to...
Well, I sort of sat down with Ian and Steve for a few sessions, and they just talked and they just reminisced, and I wrote it down and tried to construct a sort of narrative structure of events. But I remember some amazing things, like when they started, it was just the two of them in a flat, and they were renting the flat and doing mail order from it in the 70s, and there was only one phone in those days. It wasn't like how it is now, and that was a payphone in the hallway. And everyone else in the house, including the landlord, kept complaining because it kept ringing. People would ring up and they go, "Oh yeah, someone wants another D&D sets, the guys upstairs," and then people would turn up dressed as wizards thinking it was a shop looking for stuff, Raoul Parker figurines and a Traveller and all the rest of it. And so they had to move, and they managed to get a tiny space at the back of a estate agent's, which was in Uxbridge Road. And I think it was there, or was it Dallingwood? I can't remember which one. People kept turning up that were dressed as wizards, and there was time they had to, when anyone turned up, they had to leave the space because there wasn't room for the three of them. They had their first employee, Trevor Graver, back then. And they'd have to leave the room for them to browse the stock that was stacked in the back house of this back empty room sort of thing at the back of an estate agent. But again, with all these wizards turning up, hobbits and all the rest of it, the estate agent decided they didn't like having them at the back because it wasn't good for people turning up in Uxbridge Road in London to buy a flash flat, having some bloke with a staff and long hippie hair clutching Invincible City State of the Invincible Overlord, or whatever it was in those days. And so they found them a place, and that was number 1 Dowling Road, the first Games Workshop shop. And they couldn't afford to rent a flat and the shop, so they lived in their van for about 3 months. And now there are like 100 and something 40 shops all over the world, and it's worth $2 billion and all that. And that's the story of Ian Livingstone living in a van and Steve Jackson living in a van, coming to where it is today. Of course, Ian and Steve got out of it, sold out. Well, it was like an internal buyout from Citadel in the 80s. But still, it's an incredible story.
It's hobbyists, isn't it? Turning and becoming entrepreneurs.
Yeah, and then it floated and everything.
Ian was saying that part of what he's looking forward to is actually having it down in writing, because he's often asked to relate the stories of the early years. And I suppose it's an opportunity as well to do a bit of reminiscing and also myth busting. Because I believe that Steve Jackson is credited with coining the term role-playing game when he was doing a review of On Guard in Owl the Weasel.
That's quite believable, because he did a lot of the marketing writing and the early workshop stuff. And I remember when I was a kid, what got me into buying D&D in the white box set was some pamphlet I found, I can't remember where, written by Steve, and it was just like the story of an adventure one night. It's like you had the DM saying, there's a corridor going to the left and a door on the right way to do it. And it was so exciting then. He was very good at that sort of thing, Steve. And they always said how Ian was the reckless maverick guy and Steve was the sensible one, sort of, and that worked really well for the pair of them. And they're still very close friends, even now, after all these years. So that I didn't know that in 1976, whatever it was, I bought that off of Games Workshop, and then I would eventually become working for them, and my mum would get me the job.
Well, I've got a similar story that I got into role-playing through an article that Steve wrote for Starburst magazine. So I joined the hobby just as you were editing.
I might have a copy of that article. Yeah. I won't look it up now, but I've got a whole folder full of all scans of White Dwarf flyers, and it's wonderful to look at all the memories of adverts in the back of White Dwarf of Raoul Partha figurines and Conan-like figures on the back of little horses and all these figures that you used to play with the D&D stuff, Traveller and RuneQuest.
And have Ian and Steve kept an archive of all that material?
Yes, there's loads of it. There's loads of scans, photos, massive amounts, which they're going to put into the book. They haven't got everything, of course, but going to Ian's house is where we meet to discuss things. He's got like rooms full of like giant Lara Croft statues, but also board game after board game and posters of the first ever White Dwarf magazine, and it's just a treasure trove of gaming history. It's wonderful. It also reminds me of one of the stories, which is sort of slightly embellished for anecdotal reasons, but it's so much fun I have to tell it, is that Ian and Steve are in their flat in Uxbridge Road, and the payphone rings in the hall, and they go down, and it's Gary Gygax. And somehow he's got, from the Owl and Weasel, which they're talking about in those days was a very important method of marketing, because you didn't have internet, you didn't have email, TV adverts are too much, so it's literally handing out pamphlets to people or getting a subscribers list. And so Gary had got that, and he'd rung them, and he wanted to sell, was talking about doing a D&D deal. And both sides were kind of convinced the other of one thing or another. So Gary thought they were a top European distributor. And Ian and Steve were thinking, oh my God, this is... they weren't quite sure what Dungeons & Dragons was, but they thought it was like a big, successful game in America, and they hadn't really seen it yet. And they ordered 6 copies, and Gary sent them over. And they thought he was like a top American gaming company, and he thought they were the greatest European. And they were in a rented hallway on a payphone, and he was in his bedroom selling them his last 6 copies. And years later, they meet up and they both go, they were both role-playing at being businessmen at the time. But of course, when they got D&D and the exclusive distribution, it changed everything for both parties in the UK. That's just a lovely story.
Yeah. I've spoken to some of the people myself who are at Dowling Road, so like Tim Olsen, who was one of the people working there, and it sounds like it was almost like a cottage industry with a big club of friends around it.
Yes, it became very much like that. One of the things that Ian and Steve were able to do was pay people not very much in those days, because everyone loved working there. And one of Tim's anecdotes that I don't know whether I've just collected them all, and Ian and Steve decide which ones go in. And there's a limited amount of space, but also no doubt they'll edit it for them to make them sound better. The one story is, I can't remember who it was. It was one guy who's working there. I don't think I ever met him, but he was dressed in frogman mask, and he had a plastic bomb or something, and he's shouting through the doorway of the shop at his other workmate working behind the counter. They were playing Killer, who was talking about and said, I'm going to kill you! I'm going to kill you! You swearing out. And this policeman just walking by. He comes in, the guy almost arrested, thinks there's like a real murder attempt coming on this kind of frogmater. It was always like, they had to ban Killer in the end because it was taking up too much time in the office and causing safety problems, like people had wired up string to electrical sockets and pretending they were wires so that you would trip over and everything.
So a memo had to go around to say no more Killer.
And we would of course meet afterwards and play games of Apocalypse or D&D or board games and that. There was a tabletop football and it was kind of like Google in the 80s, 70s and 80s before anyone thought of it. So there was a tabletop football machine, a table tennis. It was very relaxing place to be, sort of spaces that you could go and hang out and just talk about creative stuff.
I get the feeling as well that there was a lot of talent spotting going on because obviously at that time people were making their own stuff, so fanzines were emerging, and particularly Dragon Lords, and I know that you worked with Ian and Mark, didn't you, for a number of years?
Yes, I shared my office with them, which was very annoying. Mark Gascoigne kept insisting on playing a throbbing gristle and punk band from the 70s, Art of Noise. God, actually I didn't mind Art of Noise, but so that was and then Ian Marsh, I hired him as my assistant, and he took over White Dwarf. I remember Mark Gascoigne was working on, I think it was Judge Dredd, the role-playing game. Yeah, kind of out of Games Workshop came so much stuff later, from, especially game books. And Mark's now got his own little publishing company. Ian Marsh is on the Isle of Wight, I think, with his wife and children. And every now and again, we sort of go to these fighting fantasy fests and people meet up that I haven't seen for years. And there are others that we're still in touch with over time.
Mm.
It's also sad that nearly all of the early game book authors came out of Games Workshop, and poor old Joe Deaver died. It's kind of a bit worrying.
And Albie Foray as well. Albie Foray.
Albie, yes. Yeah, he was like my line manager back in the day, and he really taught me a lot about editing and how to be concise with your words. He really knew his stuff. Taught me a lot. Terrible shame. I will, of course, live forever by eating the hearts of babies. Sell them. Yeah, it's a tricky one. Do I eat their hearts or wait for them to grow up so I can sell them a book? So I have to leave some of them alive.
Yes, you got to have an audience somehow. What role-playing games did you have on? Were you playing regularly around that time?
In those days, it was D&D and RuneQuest, particularly. Dave Morris and I used to play a lot of RuneQuest, and then EPT, Empire of the Petal Throne, and that became the primary game I've played for 30 years or so now. D&D, it was too eclectic and too much of a chucked in everything from orcs to, I don't know, Oni from Japan. It didn't feel like it had a consistency of its lore. You know what I mean? It was all general fantasy thrown together, sub-Tolkien stuff, whereas EPT, Emperor of the Petal Throne, was totally original and very different. And it took a lot of getting into, but once you got into it, it felt like I had all languages written for all the different creatures, and they were all sort of fitted in with the whole sense of what the world is about. It wasn't just like Greek mythology mixed up with Norse mythology or any of that kind of thing. And also a little bit of Traveller, but I got into a bit of trouble for that, because when you applied for the job on White Dwarf, you had to be a master of RuneQuest, D&D, and Traveller. And I'd never played Traveller, but I simply claimed in the interview that I had. And later they found out that I'd been lying. And Steve coined the term for me, Jammy Dodger, which is you remember Jammy?
Yes.
I became known for a while, Jammy Dodger. And then other rather more unfortunate names, sobriquets, we perhaps should not mention. But I soon got into my Traveller.
Yeah, I know that a lot of people who early in the hobby either went down the path of Glorantha or Techiman. Is it the world building aspect of it that particularly appeals to you?
Yeah, I think it does. I think I like to role play characters properly. So I guess it sounds a bit, up myself, but nevertheless, that's what I enjoy. So I need to have a fully rounded, believable world that you can immerse yourself in. And that immersion is very important. So it needs to be consistent and make sense within its own terms. That was one of the great things about the Gloranthan universe. It was all fitted in with itself, and especially that's true of Techiman. That's why I didn't like D&D. I didn't like the system of D&D up much either. It was too bit weird when you think about it. Of course, I don't really know what it's like now, because I don't really play the 6th or 7th edition or whatever it is. But back in those days, the armor class, it was all. RuneQuest was much more mathematically made more sense rule-wise. But also, the whole thing, both EPT, both Techiman and Glorantha were consistent worlds that just worked, and you could lose yourself in them. So over the years, I've played all sorts of different characters and the different possibilities that you can have, temples, and religions, and tribes. Whereas D&D didn't have that sense. It didn't feel like we were in a place. Except for one campaign, but that was created. The whole world background was created by my writing partner Mark Min Smith, the world of Orb, and that just happened to be D&D. But again, that was wonderful because it was. The gods weren't just a mishmash of this and that from different mythologies. It was all consistent and something that you could feel you were really a part of.
So you mentioned Mark Smith. He's collaborated with you. So was he a member of your group?
Yes. So I went to school with Min, and I sort of got them all into D&D. My old friends who were into it. And he then created the world of Orb, and that was the campaign that we played in. And we used that world for the Talisman of Death. And Way of the Tiger. And one of the things that I believe gave Way of the Tiger an edge was, of course, my wonderful system of ninjutsu and my genius writing. I suppose I have to admit that Min contributed something, but we generally wrote each book half each, and he created the whole world. But one of the things that made that world feel, and it's often been commented on by people who talked to me in the later years about how they enjoyed Way of the Tiger, was the sense that the world was real and consistent. And it wasn't just that it was going on in the background. And we were able to do that by having the main character turn up in a city, say, and an event occurs in the background as you're passing by, which usually, and also all the characters, a lot of the characters in the world that you meet were based on real characters in the campaign. So they were all properly rounded characters that had been developed over years, year-long campaign arcs. And we used all of that stuff happening. So something that had happened in a campaign I hadn't been playing in, for instance, with a different group of friends that Min had been running it for, would have done something in their game that we then put into the book. So a temple of such and such is burning in the background and people run out screaming. And that's a real event. And it made the reader feel like there was a real world going on with or without him or her. And then they would play their story. But other people's stories were happening. And that really gave it a sense of a real world they were adventuring in, rather than just a random forest with an evil guy sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I think that was quite important in its success.
And speaking of now, do you continue to game? Is it still something that you do?
Yeah. We've just been playing in Dave Morris's Dragon Warriors world because he's working on a new rule system because he feels the old one's a bit out of date, calling it Dual Spider. So having a lot of fun with that. It's sort of. Have you played Dragon Warriors?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
It's a sort of alternate medieval one.
I've still got my paperbacks on my bookshelf up here. Yeah.
So I'm playing at the moment an evil peasant archer. Having a lot of fun with it.
And is that a regular group that you've got?
Yes. We did a kind of another chap called Oliver Johnson, who you might know.
Oh yes, yeah.
He ran a campaign which was sort of a bit like Westworld, and so, but it was GURPS. So we did a long sort of GURPS Western thing. That was quite fun. Although actually, I have to admit, I hate GURPS. No offence to Steve Jackson, but it's so complicated. It takes so long to do anything. Did you ever hear of a system called Chivalry and Sorcery?
Yes. Yeah.
Way back when, and they were huge tomes of such complexity. I still remember reading the rules on how to make a campfire and to make percentage dice rolls to light the fire and add your skill in firelighting and all that. And I thought, no, I'm not playing that. And GURPS is a bit like that.
And so Dave's plans for Dragon Warriors, is that to lighten up the rules, or what changes can we expect?
Very much, yes. We were also all playing a system called Saga of the Icelanders. Do you know that? And it's based on the Apocalypse system. What's it called?
Oh, Powered by the Apocalypse.
It was so perfect for all of these role-playing Iceland sagas, Viking sagas. Oh no, done Saga of the Icelanders. Just come up with Saga Iceland Holidays. Those
I'll make a note of that.
yeah. Interesting. Anyway, so it's an incredibly simple system where you, but is so rich in its role-playing possibilities because you basically have 2d6 for any given skill, and 7 to 9 is a success, but with a price to pay. The DM could save that price for later, or something is a semi-success, and higher than that is a great success, and lower than that isn't. But everyone else in the party, according to what bonds they may or may not have with you, and other skills, can add or deduct to that roll. And it's a single roll that resolves everything, and it's all about the saga telling. So the DM, I remember one, we had a chap was doing a duel, and because I played an ex-Persian slave who was the slave to one of the lords, and it was a lot of fun because they're all like primitive barbarians because it's all set in like 19th century Iceland or 10th century Iceland, and the Persians at that time were at the peak of their civilization, the wonderful cities and all that. But the system was so simple and pure and lent itself so much to the role-playing and the storytelling side of it. Dave was deciding he wanted to simplify the Dragon Warriors. He hasn't got quite as far as Saga of the Icelanders in that sense, but it's trying to make a clever. But it is generally a lot easier than GURPS, but more complex than Saga of the Icelanders. Just trying to make less combats last past more quickly and have more time for the story role-playing aspects.
And I guess when you get together with Dave, this is where you put the world to rights, because I know that you're very
we have many drunken rants, yes. He's a lot more political than I am. Although we kind of agree, but he uses it. It looks like I'm a completely rabid Remainer, which I am, of course. But
at the time of recording, we're in the throes of an endless, catastrophe. Well, I don't know how you describe it. And of course, you collaborated with Dave on Can You Brexit?
That was a real eye opener. Most of it is Dave's, about 90% of it. And in terms of the mechanics of game books, there's been a very clever use of time in that he's managed to put together. It's pretty complicated. So that essentially there are 3 or 4, I don't want to say epochs, that's too long, but turns, but they're longer than turns, in a game book structure. So you have all this stuff that you do. It's a sort of thing I similarly used in the Falcon books and also the Eternal Champions game books. It's a complicated process of having to make choices. There's only so much you can do in a given time space, and having to make a time space, how to make that work in a game book. So you have to sort of tick little boxes is one way of doing it until you've run out of time. You have to move on to the next section of the negotiation, that kind of thing. But anyway, it became very clear doing all of the research that leaving the EU was only going to be economically painful and no real benefits at all. Didn't really make any sense. I did a lot of research on fishing. I won't bore you with it, but the poor old fishermen are doomed if they leave, even though they've... Anyway, that's sort of a long and complex thing full of stuff about fishing licenses. And
I suppose when you wrote it, you'd expected it to have a short shelf life, but I suppose it's been prolonged, hasn't it?
Yes, it was particularly annoying because we sent it to a publisher and they sent a load of publishers, and most of the marketing people said, no one's interested in Brexit and it's too late. And then Dave got in touch by an editor who'd loved the book, and it was maybe 6 months later, and he goes, I'm so pissed off. We should have done it because it's gone on and on. And it's in the newspapers every day, all the time. It's like free marketing for a book. And also, you don't have to sell that book to the entire population who probably are sick of it. But the people who would buy it are the sort of hundreds of thousands who read Brexit stories every day. Yes. So it's annoying, yeah. So we sell it on print on demand on Amazon, but really it's a chance missed. Yeah. And I can just imagine them going, damn it, we missed that, it's too late. And then another year goes by. And go, damn it, we should have done it the second time round. And it'll probably be another year, even if Boris wins, which is likely. There'll still be a year's transition before.
Yes.
And then there'll be all of those negotiations about the trade deal.
Yes. I certainly learned a lot from participating in the book.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
You managed to... There is one way, I think, of where you can stay in power and remain. Because the premise of the book is obviously that you must simply stay in power.
Yes. Yeah.
So Theresa May lost. Boris's book, I think, I can't remember his name. I think it's Peter Straw. As in straw-headed Peter. We had a lot of fun giving them all the names. Like Gove is Mr. Toad, I think. Maybe Dave's changed that one. I don't remember. Farage, I think, is still Mr. Fungal.
Yes. Brilliant, thank you. Well, thanks for that, Jamie, and we'll be back next time to look in more detail at some of the projects you've been working on. Thank you.
Okay.
Another open box.
Open box? It's our open box, where we look backwards to look forwards. I've got Blythe with me. Hello, Blythe.
Hello, Dirk.
Hello, we're in the pub, because we've got something to celebrate.
Yes.
Do you know
what is it?
Do you not realise that this month, 40 years ago, we became friends for the first time?
Oh, right. It's flown, hasn't it? It seems longer.
Yeah, 1979.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And mutual admiration of Princess Leia.
Princess Leia brought us.
she brought us together, didn't she?
Yeah, it was a gum card, wasn't it? The cards that you got with...
you got with bubblegum, you got Star Wars cards, didn't you?
Yeah.
In those days, for younger listeners, a cardboard picture of some Star Wars characters was exciting. Yeah. This is before the internet. There's the internet in a pack of bubblegum. Our version of the internet.
Yeah, and it was overlooking at Princess Leia,
Yes.
At that time, that brought us together.
It's like salacious, that, isn't it?
It does.
But we were only 11.
Yeah.
I think you said, I like Princess Leia. And I said, I like her as well. And that was it.
That was it.
It was kind of common ground.
And
we
we're
both
here.
like Princess Leia.
And because of that moment, we're together.
We're together still.
There was something else as well. There was gaming that brought us together in an obtruse way, because at lunchtime there was a group of people who played line tig.
Line tig, yes.
Line tig, where you would run around the yard, and the person who was tagged, or tagged, as we say, tagged.
You had to stay on the lines.
You had to stay on the lines.
Which were the lines of various football, netball, basketball.
Yeah.
No one played any of those games. They'd gone to the trouble of lining out all these different sports for us. No one gave a monkey. No one played any of those. We just ran around them, didn't we?
Yeah, ran around.
Tagging each other.
And there was a kind of a large group of people playing that initially, wasn't there? But we managed to get ostracised because we kept insisting on introducing new rules.
Yes.
Like trying to find mechanical balance for the safety spot. Do you remember that?
I do remember that. Yeah, we overcomplicated it. No one else was interested.
And then there was something else. I don't know if you remember this. That brought us together, because we were playing tig and then everybody went away.
Yeah.
And I said to you, I'm thinking of releasing the hostages in Iran.
I do remember that. You still haven't done it. You've still got some.
I was at home. I had an Escape from Colditz kit.
Oh yes, I remember those.
Yeah.
They were good.
So you got like...
I think if you were sent to Colditz, they'd take them off you. They weren't much good. You'd have to parachuted in. But they were good. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like a player kit, wasn't it?
Yeah.
What did you aim in? You got like official documents, didn't you?
You got like fake papers, didn't you? And did you get like a compass and a gun and stuff like that?
I seem to remember like a weird jelly thing in it. Am I imagining that?
Wasn't it?
I think it was something to do with invisible ink.
Did you get a glider? You can escape from the top of the castle like they did. Dude,
It's
very big.
There was definitely jelly in it. I don't know. Might get very lonely, can't it?
Jelly.
Get lonely in that prison.
In Colditz, yeah.
Anyway, you had this kit, and I was plotting, because I think about the time it was when the diplomats were held hostage in Iran, and it was in the news all the time, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So I hatched a plan for how I was going to release them.
Yes.
And one play.
Always had ideas above your station, haven't you? It's fair to say. You were 11. But carry on. Noble that you were concerned about these people, prepared to risk your life.
You're mocking me, but you were
I am mocking you. Rightly so, but go on.
You were in, weren't you?
I was in on it, yeah, I was in on it.
I know,
I have to say. I think I took it with equal seriousness.
And we plotted, didn't we? Plotted how we were going to do it. And we made these artificial papers out of the...
Yeah, we did.
To get over the border. And we brought a plastic gun into school, didn't we?
Yeah. This conversation, you realise this conversation means we can never visit Iran now. It's probably going on some official record, and as soon as you get off the plane in Iran, they'll arrest you.
And we did it, didn't we? We actually reenacted it on a...
Well, when you say we did it, I think we need to be clear. It was sort of kind of reenaction. It was an early foray into role play, wasn't it? I think that's what it was. We didn't release any hostages in Iran.
No, but we went on the park. We dicked about for a bit.
Dicking about a bit on the park, which essentially is tantamount to releasing the hostages. In our 11-year-old imagination.
And we ran over the Farnworth Bolton
Boulder into Freedom, into Bolton, which was free Bolton, rather than Farnworth, which was some kind of weird theocracy.
I suppose what I'm getting round to is that we've always had this.
Go on.
We've always had this sense of playing games, you know. You could say that was like live action role playing.
It was.
Our first. In our young mind, because what is RPGs other than
just using imagination?
Well, just dicking about to rules.
And even the rules can be fairly lax, can't they?
Yeah.
I think as well, we've said this before, and I think that's why role-playing games kind of stuck, did it? Because we like to use our imagination, and suddenly you got a medium where you could do that.
Yeah.
In a slightly more legitimate way than just running around with an Escape from Colditz kit.
Yeah, and a plastic gun.
Yeah.
Now, I'm bringing this up as well because we've had Jamie Thomson on the programme, and he mentioned Killer.
Oh,
now,
yeah.
Do you remember Killer?
I do, yeah.
They had a copy of this at our local toy store, didn't they? And I think
Mm.
around the time when we first got into role-playing games, Killer had a strange fascination. We used to read it in there.
Yeah, it felt a bit kind of dangerous, didn't it? And odd, because it wasn't a role-playing game in terms of dice. It was like a game where you tried to kill your friends, but with a banana gun. A banana as a gun.
And
So one step above the Escape from Colditz kit.
Yeah.
Fruit bowl.
It's a vicious fruit ball.
Deadly fruit bowl. Apple as a grenade. Banana as a gun.
Yeah, and a piece of string to electrocute it.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
And then like some strange lengths that you have to go to like assassinate your friends.
Yeah.
And
It was a very odd thing, wasn't it? I mean, I think it was odder as well because we'd gone through the pain barrier of understanding what a role-playing game was. Opening RuneQuest, opening Traveller, working out how to play those, and then weirdly looking at Killer, which in some ways was more akin to what we'd been doing before.
yeah,
Wasn't it? Running around, just like dicking about with a banana, or it's a gun, you're dead, bang bang, you're dead. It's kind of like, on the one sense, child's play, but in another way, it felt weird. I said, like, what's this?
Well, I've got to look at it now. I've got a copy of it now, and it is like a BDSM handbook. It's full of like disclaimers of what you should try and avoid doing.
Trying to avoid doing is actually killing people. I mean, I think the weapon classifications is hilarious. There's class A, which is like things like a banana. That's the banana, right?
Yeah.
That's class A. So it's not even a weapon. You can't really even hurt someone with a banana with a gun. Then there's B, which is like a bit of string or a bit of rope, and C, which is something else. And then he mentions category D. Category D, like real weapons. This is don't use them. Don't use real guns. Yeah, don't use real guns. Don't kill your friends.
Yeah.
Does that? Where's this going? It's gone down a rabbit hole, this, hasn't it?
Yeah. And places you shouldn't go. Don't go into the opposite sex
Toilets.
toilets.
Yeah, it does. Just mentions that, doesn't it? Yeah. Places that are off limits. Yeah.
Yeah.
The opposite sex toilets.
A moving car.
Moving cars. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Nuclear missile silos. Don't push any buttons. You kill all your friends, but you've won. Well done. But humanity's lost.
and looking at it now, as a kid, it would have an appeal, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
But as an adult, the thought of playing a game like this where you thought, right, the rest of my friends are trying to assassinate me at any moment now, during today.
It could be terrifying. Even if you did have a banana as a gun, it would still be terrifying.
It'd be like, the Return of the Pink Panther. It'd be like
Kato
coming around the corner.
Yeah, Kato, you jump out of a cupboard in your bedroom, try and kill your friend. Yeah.
I don't know, a bedroom's off limits.
Bedrooms off limits. Are wardrobes off limits?
I don't know.
Unless they're in a bedroom or toilets of the opposite sex. But wardrobes themselves are not.
Yeah.
So even then, it could still be frightening.
Yeah, the thought of you leaping out at me in my kitchen.
Yeah, it's
with a banana going bang, bang.
Bang, bang, you're dead. But then again, that's category A. I could leap out with something, I could push it to category C. Like a
stick of celery.
Heated frying pan. I don't know. Stick of celery, kiwi fruit grenade. Boom, you're dead. And all your family are too. So scatter effect, shrapnel.
So Killer's still available. You can still get it to download from the Steve Jackson game. I suggest you go out and do it because it'll amuse you.
It'll freak you out. If nothing else, it'll either amuse you or freak you out, or both. Yeah.
On the one hand, you can see that it would appeal to a certain sense of humour, but I don't know if it's scary.
Well, it's a strange. It's strange because don't know, you sort of think... You go back to the 80s, you used to have people's sort of anxieties about role-playing games, didn't they? They're playing D&D. Look, there's a spell here that's about summoning demons and sacrificing people. What are these children up to? Now, that's kind of easy to explain away than running around, trying to pretend to kill your friends with a piece of string. Somehow that seems harder to explain in some senses.
I can't imagine my dad coming out and saying, "What are you doing?" "Oh, I'm just digging a 2-inch deep pit to get Stephen and assassinate him." "All right, carry on."
Carry on then. Nothing to worry about. It's always odd. It's a bit odd. There you go. It'd be interesting to know if anyone's ever given a go at playing it.
So, playing live action role playing,
yes,
is something that we were always drawn to, weren't we? But we were never drawn to enough to pay for it. So,
no.
Treasure Trap. We saw Treasure Trap. And I think at Northern Games Day we mentioned before, haven't we? You saw a demonstration of that.
Well, I saw a demonstration of it. And when I say demonstration, I think I use the term loosely because it essentially was two groups of people charging at each other with rubber swords and foam maces hitting each other. So that was the demonstration.
Yeah.
Hard to know what was going on.
I mean, they were always advertised in White Dwarf to go to, I think it was in Cheshire, wasn't it? Castle in Cheshire.
Cheshire, down south. Cheshire.
And whenever role-playing appeared on TV, it was always accompanied by...
Well, I think this may just be our interpretation of things, but I think it may be other people's as well. But what was odd around that time, the kind of mid-80s, was that we'd got into role-playing games sort of, early 80s. We'd been playing them for about 2, 3, 4 years. And then things like Treasure Trap emerged, the live-action role-playing. And it felt at the time, I think, this is my memory of it, it felt like a natural progression that these role-playing games are all well and good, but they've had their day. They've been around for 3 years, I suppose, an eternity. And the next step will be live action role playing. Why wouldn't it be? Why would you want to still sit there with a piece of paper when you can dress up and charge around with a sword and do it for real? And it did there was a sense, I think, in the mid 80s for it might have only been like 12 months, 18 months, that was the way it was going. And that, in the future we would be sitting here being nostalgic about role-playing games, and no one will be playing them. Everyone will be going to some cave somewhere, wandering around in a robe with a pointy hat on, casting imaginary spells. It did feel like that, didn't it? I think that it was the way it was going to go, the progression of things.
But we weren't able to pay for it, so we hatched a plan, didn't we?
Yes.
To do DIY.
DIY
LARP.
DIY LARP.
So when we met Eddie, so this is some years later, wasn't it?
Yes.
Our hostage freeing and SAS
days were over.
Yeah. We
didn't like to talk about it.
No. We were fully into Robin of Sherwood at that time.
Yeah.
Talked about that earlier in the year. And that thought of messing about in the woods was a big part of with Robin of Sherwood. And we wanted to be part of it, and we wanted to do it. And Eddie and Herbs told us of a plan that they
well, let's say the cast of characters were me, you and Eddie and Herbs.
Yeah.
It was Herbs, wasn't it? Eddie's friend. Eddie's slightly odd. It's fair to say odd friend, Herbs.
Yeah, and Swab as well.
Martin Swabber. Again, He
was a lot bigger than us, wasn't he?
He's not bigger than us. I'm quite big, but he was bigger.
Yeah.
And there was also our Carl, Eddie's nephew.
Yeah.
Was it his nephew? His nephew, wasn't it?
Eddie's nephew.
Eddie has a much older sister, so his nephew was about our age.
Yeah.
So, that's the cast of characters who were all keen to do a bit of DIY LARPing.
Yeah. So, in the weeks before, we had to prepare, didn't we? We had to prepare. We were going to go. We had this weekend planned that we were going to go away. Well,
Herbs had some distant relatives who had a farm, didn't they?
Yeah, farm.
There was he said there was a bungalow on the farm. A bungalow.
A bungalow.
No.
Hold that
We'll
thought.
come back to that.
Yeah.
Go back to that thought. Had a bungalow on the farm. To my mind,
Yeah.
quite a nice
So
idea.
I'm thinking a bungalow. I'm thinking a thatched roof with a real fire and smoke coming out.
At the very least, I'm thinking 4 walls and a roof. But as we'll find out, we're to be disappointed on that front, won't we? But anyway, let's not get to that bit yet.
Yeah.
It was a bungalow and there was a barn and some farmland, and it seemed like, in Herbs' opinion, an ideal spot to do a bit of larping.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And weeks before, we had to prepare our costumes and characters.
Costume and weapons. Both get the weapons.
Yes. Yeah. So we transformed my dad's garage into a smithy, didn't we?
Yes.
With wood, and we planed rapiers, didn't we? We made very fine things. I seem to remember wrapping around the hilt some elastoplast to give us a grip on the hilt.
Yes, yeah. And I think we made as well foam maces, didn't we? So like a broom handle cut in half, and then we wrapped foam and put a little sock over it. So it was like a mace. You could wallop someone, it wouldn't really hurt.
And didn't we find a couple of old lids that we used as
Plastic bin lids.
Plastic bin
lids as shields.
Shields, yeah.
Write this down, everyone.
Yeah.
When you're LARP, these are the things.
This is
what you need to do.
Yeah.
Plastic bin lids. See, that's the wheelie bin now. Can't do that, can you? that's what this country's come to. You can't make a plastic. Well, yeah, plastic bin lids as shields.
And I remember having a cape as well, a red cape. I don't know
Eddie's sister made us some like hoods and stuff, didn't that? Medieval styly hoods. Do you remember?
Yeah, because she was a seamstress.
Yeah, she made us these hoods with the medieval style hoods and cloaks. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
To look the part.
To look the part. So he wouldn't look weird running around with a sword, and people say he's got a sword, but he doesn't look very medieval.
And I made a helmet.
You did?
I was particularly proud of my helmet.
You were.
Which was a garden bucket. With eye holes cut out in like a grill fashion. And
yes.
It looked good, didn't it?
It did look good until you turned your head. and your head turned, but the bucket didn't. You look like a rubbish Ned Kelly. Yeah. Like a kind of cut price Ned Kelly that you were very proud. You thought, I'll survive anything wearing this helmet.
Yeah.
But of course you couldn't say anything.
Couldn't say anything because every time I moved,
the bucket just stayed the same. There's no padding in it. It's just swinging round on your neck.
And I couldn't cut high holes all the way around it because that would just be ridiculous, wouldn't it? I'd look stupid, wouldn't I? Yeah. With a bucket on my head.
Yeah, with a bucket on your head, just put 2 eye holes. Don't put multiple eye holes. You'd look stupid. Yeah. You don't want to look stupid. We didn't want to look stupid, did we? No. So we did our weapons and armour.
Yeah.
We did quite a good job.
Yeah, daggers as well, I think we did.
Daggers,
little daggers. And I seem to remember us gluing jewels on them.
Yeah.
And didn't we have as well, we wanted to cast spells, so we got some silly string.
Yeah, and
web spell.
Yeah.
And little pots of glitter.
Yeah.
To cast spells.
I think we'd done it properly.
And
then Herbs, Eddie and Swabber turned up with their weapons. It's fair to say, I think the best way of describing them is cricket bats.
Painted silver
with some runes painted on.
Yeah.
It's cricket bat. I remember that we looked at it and thought, if you hit us with those, you will at best break a limb, at worst kill us.
Category D, I'd say.
Category D, weapon and killer, yeah. Cricket bat. Maybe with a cricket bat. It was a cricket bat with like a.
It was like half-inch plywood, wasn't it?
Yeah.
They'd used it was like really big, and they were huge.
Yeah.
Like claymores, weren't they?
Yeah. We thought, you're gonna hit us with those. That's gonna injure us.
Do you know what secrets?
And at that point, I could have said, "We're not going." But you know what? We didn't. We carried on.
You know,
Blythe, secretly I was thinking, I'll be all right, I've got a helmet.
Well, you were, yeah, you were going to survive. I was thinking, I'm going to die because I've not got a helmet. All I've got is a bin-lid shield. That'll put my parry skills up to it. Otherwise, I'm a dead man.
Hello, my name is Shannon Ferguson, and I go by the name The Angry Monk on various RPG forums and Twitter. I want to thank Dirk the Dice for giving me the opportunity to share my first, last, and everything. My first is Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. My first contact with AD&D happened at a friend's dining room table. I was not a participant, but an annoying onlooker, as his older brother and one of his friends were playing this unusual game. I knew it was a game because there were dice, very weird dice, and there were tokens, little silver figures holding swords, but there was no game board. Clifford and I hunched at the end of the table, badgering his older brother with questions. "What is this?" we asked. He replied, "This is Advanced Dungeons & Dragons." "Where's the game board?" "You don't need one." "How'd you play?" "Buzz off." What I eventually learned was that there was no game board because you could go anywhere and do anything in this game. I watched carefully as the older brother drew out a dungeon for his friend on graph paper. I saw his friend making decisions about where he wanted his token to go and what he wanted his token to do. And I saw these fascinating dice being rolled as the older brother's friend fought goblins and orcs and skeletons. I cannot exaggerate the incredible epiphany that occurred. This game could go on forever. I was hooked. I had read The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, and this game would allow me to play in a world like Middle-earth and be a character like Strider or Gandalf. The possibilities were exploding in my mind. A few months later, I saw the game advertised in a department store catalog and begged my mum for it. It was, of course, the wrong edition, Moldvay's Basic Dungeons & Dragons, but it didn't matter. This was the game for me. My last is Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. Flash forward 40 years. I teach in a small-town high school in Ontario, Canada. Although I continued to dabble in RPGs, I knew that Dungeons & Dragons was a major faux pas in adult conversations. Even my professional colleagues, so caring and concerned about our students' foibles, would roll their eyes when they learned that I had played D&D. Until one day, when a group of 4 first-year students nervously approached my desk. They asked, "Are you Mr. Ferguson? Have you ever heard of a game called Dungeons & Dragons?" And that was the beginning of my high school's D&D club. We've been playing 5th edition D&D for the past 4 years. Now, I'll admit that I had my doubts about a newer version of the game, but as it was the only game that these students wanted to play, I bit the bullet and purchased the 3 core books. It's been fun. We've ventured through Ravenloft, fought giants, and I even led them through my homebrew version of the fighting fantasy port town of Blacksand. Today we have 18 players, 3 DMs, including myself, and a healthy cross-section of genders. The teachers in my school now kind of respect D&D. My everything is Basic Fantasy Role-Playing Game. Basic Fantasy Role-Playing Game by Chris Gonnerman is the game I play the most. I'm involved in a group on Roll20 and we play on a weekly basis. When I came out of my own deep freeze, I looked at all my old games, at other games, and at other versions of my favorite games. But I found them all wanting. They were either too clunky or too complicated. I realized that I wanted to go back to my Moldvay and Cook basic and expert D&D, but there were things about those rules that I wanted to change and update. And then I found Basic Fantasy Role-Playing Game. Here was simplicity with just the right amount of crunch. Perfect for dungeon crawling and treasure hunting adventures. And what's this? all sorts of pre-made modules and supplements to keep me going for years. And it was free. Yeah, that's right, free. I have paid for printed copies of the rules and several of the modules, but everything you ever wanted was absolutely free. How could I resist? So, while I haven't ventured too far from my roots of Dungeons & Dragons, I do occasionally play other games. Thanks to the Grognar files, I've picked up RuneQuest, Mercenary Spies and Private Eyes, Tunnels and Trolls, and just recently, Mothership. But always at the end, I'm back in that dungeon, swinging a sword or hoping I have enough magic missiles to survive. So thanks again, Dirk, Blythe, Ed, and the Daily Dwarf, for reinvigorating this old grognard. Cheers.
Welcome back to Little Bolton Town Hall. I must apologise, they've turned the volume up. It's a little bit later on. We're going to continue our story of going to the far place of Newton Le Willows.
Down south.
Down south.
And
Travelled there by bus, didn't we? Swab didn't turn up, did he?
no, he didn't. And when we got there, I think the people who owned they had a house on the land, didn't they?
Yeah.
Which was quite a nice house.
Yeah.
But they looked slightly terrified when we turned up.
Yeah.
Possibly rightly so.
So we were picturing a farm, weren't we? That's how it was sold to us. It was
Picturesque farm with a lovely bungalow that you could all sleep in.
and a barn that we could use to reenact
the battles of days of yore.
Yeah. And that's what we were expecting.
Yes.
And so we turned up at the farmhouse, and this old elderly couple, they must have been in the 80s, mustn't they?
Yes.
It took a while for them to answer the door.
Yeah.
And then they see in front of them these, kids. And they looked terrified, didn't they?
They did look terrified, yeah. Yeah, they did.
And Herbs, did his introductions and reminded them who he was.
He's some distant relative.
And he was turning up, and he seemed to confirm that it was all right. And he was about to go when Eddie said, "Where were you last week?"
Well, didn't you enjoy your holiday?
Yeah, that was
He
it.
said, did you enjoy your holiday? They looked bemused, didn't they?
Yeah.
And he gave Herbs a wry look as if to say,
Yeah,
we couldn't come last week because we were on holiday. Yeah.
And so that set the tone.
It set a bit of a tone, yeah. It did.
Set the tone.
Yeah.
And that tone wasn't helped when we actually saw the bungalow.
No, it wasn't. No. Because it was essentially 3 walls and no roof.
Yeah.
It reminded me, for those who were into modelling, Airfix modelling at the time, it looked like the bombed out Airfix house. Do you remember? There was a model of a bombed house that you could buy. I think I had it. And it looked like that. I just did slightly worse than that, actually.
In the days before, in my imagination, I was thinking that, the people who were on the farm would come to us at night just to make sure we're all comfy.
Look after us.
They would turn up with some biscuits and perhaps some hot milk.
Hot milk.
I've never had that.
And biscuits.
I've never had that. I just imagine it
You never had that in your life, then?
No. Even Blighton, I thought it would be like that, where...
I can understand your obsession with hobnobs now. It's becoming clear, like therapy.
I just thought they'd be coming, with we'll just bake some biscuits, lads.
Look after you. Look after a nice, plush bungalow.
What they actually did was lock all the doors and windows.
Lots of doors, they didn't leave. They did not see them.
We turned up and we walked in, and we were already feeling a little...
I think we were disappointed. Doesn't really cut it, does it? It's
slightly unsettled
by it, yeah.
And so we walked into this room, and there was an open fire, and that makes it sound more idyllic than it was. It was
just a fire.
It was just a fire, fire in the middle of the thing, and a mattress.
Yeah.
And Eddie lifted up the mattress, and a load of cockroaches ran out of it.
Yeah.
Scurried in every single direction.
As they do. Yeah.
And went into the second room, and the second room had an iron bed, didn't it? Like an iron bed
with a kind of wire bit, the springs and all that. We decided we were going to both sleep on the big bed with the springs on, no mattress, just a spring. Like a weird Morecambe and Wise on a bed of nails.
Yes.
Weren't we?
Yeah.
You know, but it was worth enduring the pain to know you were a couple of feet off the ground, you know, because of all the things that could have got you on the ground. Yeah.
I locked away my provisions, corned beef.
Oh yeah, you had some corned beef, didn't you?
Loads of pot noodles.
Pot noodles, but with no way boiling any water.
There was no water.
There was no water, was there? So
there was a standpipe, wasn't there?
Yeah.
We had to go to a standpipe.
Yeah, but it didn't really work.
No.
Well, the only source of food I remember was up the road there's a petrol station. Do you remember?
Yeah.
And we used to make regular trips to the petrol station to buy like Mars bars and crisps and stuff because we were just starving basically. And as the weekend went on, we looked more and more kind of unkempt. And there was a girl behind the counter, wasn't there? It was always the same girl. I think in imagination she was quite attractive. And I think we had discussions about whether one of us should ask her out. as if one of us would turn up covered in soot, fire smoke, ask her out. Would you like to go out for a drink with me? Are you an eligible bachelor?
Yeah. Come back to my bungalow.
Come back to my bungalow. Well, no, come back to my bungalow because of the people then. It's not really a bungalow, it's a ruin. But, ask her out. You don't need an answer now because I'll be back in now for another bloody Mars bar. I'm starving. But
it was only humanity.
She was the face of civilization, wasn't she? This bored girl behind her. She looked like, I remember, I can see the look on her face now, like disdain, wasn't it?
Yeah.
She said, who are these? They keep coming in. And every time they come in, they look more and more unkempt and smelly and covered in smoke. You know, they can come in for another Mars bar. What's going on here? She's probably worried as well.
And so the layout of the place, in the centre of it wasn't like a farm, was it? It was like a massive concrete slab with a massive barn built onto it. And in the near distance, there was Newton Le Willows colliery.
Yes, colliery, wasn't there? Yeah.
And it was the time of the miners' strike, right, wasn't it? Yeah. So that had like an eerie...
Yeah, it was lit up, wasn't it? The eerie glow to it. Yeah, it was a bit like that.
Yeah. And so... And then on this other side, there were fields and fields and fields and fields for as far as you could see.
There were.
Of corn.
Corn. Was it corn or something? We didn't know. We still don't know. We're not farmers, but for our imagination, it was corn.
Yeah. So I seem to remember that we then went on like a photo shoot. We put our kit on. We went in the field.
There is photographic evidence. Or there was. Whether it's been destroyed or not, I don't know. I hope it has.
Yeah.
I'd like that to get out.
Yeah, because we took an Instamatic with us, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
Took some pictures of us wielding swords in this field. And we looked
wielding swords or cricket bats with rooms on, depending who you were. Yeah.
I had my elegant rapier.
Your elegant helmet on. Ned Kelly with his rapier. Feeling comfortable that no cricket bat can penetrate it.
Yeah. we took some pictures, and I remember that being the best bit.
That was the best bit, yeah, because it hadn't really started to go wrong. Yeah. It's like a family holiday. It's the best bit, is right at the beginning. It's not started to go wrong. It's the same principle, wasn't it? Yeah.
We hadn't started to get irritated by each other, had we?
And hungry. And slightly tetchy. It was like Lord of the Flies.
It was. So we devised this scenario where half of the party would be members of the castle, and the other part of the party would have to infiltrate.
Yes.
It was groundbreaking stuff.
Groundbreaking.
And I think I was on the infiltrating
You
party.
and Eddie were on the infiltrating side, me, Herbs and Carl were on the defensive side. I don't quite know why the numbers worked out like that. You'd think it'd be the other way around, wouldn't it?
Didn't my great... I remember now, we had to try and get hold of the dagger that I
that's right. It was like an ornamental dagger we had. It wasn't a real dagger, it was just like an ornamental dagger.
I made it because I spent a lot of time like sticking stuff to it.
Yeah.
I'd done like an elastoplast hilt.
It was like a magical dagger, and you had to retrieve it, we had to defend it.
Yeah, that was it. And I remember my tactic was to talk to you, do a charisma roll, and just keep you talking, whilst I knew that Eddie was sneaking around in the pitch darkness.
Start banging your head on things. Wish I had a bucket helmet. There you go.
And I was talking down below, and you were up ahead. Oh no, go away. And then all I heard was Eddie attacking. Up above my head.
I remember running out of the barn because I thought it's safer out here than in there because I keep banging my head on things. There's a big hole in the barn I can't see. And I'm going to die just falling down the big hole in the barn. The barn kind of like an upper bit, didn't it? That we were in. And this big hole in it. You just couldn't see in the dark. And you could get out alive.
Our Carl came at me with his plywood cricket bat, swinging it backwards and forwards, coming at me. I thought, thank God I've got a helmet. And I was like backing back, fighting him. My sword snapped because it was only a flimsy thing.
Yeah.
I reached inside my pocket to cast a spell, silly string. That wasn't going to do anything.
No. Turned your head, couldn't see. Was the helmet?
Couldn't see. I fell over. I thought I was dead.
And at that point, I think we all realised it was a bit of a crap idea. I think that was the ironic thing about it, that there was that thing we did in the barn, and after that, we didn't do any more, did we?
No.
It just descended into some kind of weird camping trip.
Yeah. I think we had a bit of a...
We had a duel with the maces, didn't we? The foam maces.
Yeah, foam maces we saw.
I nearly shot your leg with an air pistol. Eddie brought his air pistol.
He did bring an air pistol.
I shot you in the leg with it, remember?
Yeah, category D weapon.
Category D weapon.
Yeah, he did. I said, just be careful with that, it's loaded. No, it isn't. Oh!
It was a safety catch. It didn't hit your leg, it missed.
It missed. It did miss.
It missed, but I could have, yeah.
Yeah.
You could have been walking with a limp now.
Yeah. But I remember that air pistol because there were like rats, weren't there? Massive rats. And
he tried to kill the rats with the air pistol.
Yeah, he tried to aim the rats, and there was one of them. It was massive. And I said, Eddie, I think it's a cat.
It's someone's dog. It's the people that is that a dog? Don't shoot the dog. It's a rat. Oh, it's a dog. I think it is a dog. Yeah. No, I think that point on, after the barn incident, the barn siege, it did just descend into a camping trip, didn't it, of sorts?
Yeah.
Just kind of goofing around, And then there was the weird noise in the night. Remember the weird noise in the night?
Well, this is the thing. After that excitement of that, we didn't do any more.
Yeah.
We thought, right, let's put a fire up. And we were a bit concerned, weren't we? Because when we were looking at the fire, the flames were green, weren't they?
Well, flames were green because I think Herbs was collecting wood in some chemical, some bucket. Remember, it's like a barrel that had sort of skull and crossbones on it, some deadly poison or something, some kind of pesticide. And he's making toast on a green fire. And you want some toast? No, you're all right. I'll stick to my miles. I'm off to the petrol station to chat up that girl at the petrol station again. See if she shows any interest. Now I'm covered in even more smoke.
Green
no,
smoke.
I'll look even worse. Maybe that's what she wants. I don't look bad enough.
So we went through the night, and we were in this. You got to imagine it. We were huddled round this.
Don't have to imagine it.
You were there.
I was there.
Yeah, I'm saying to the people.
Oh,
listening,
sorry. Yeah.
That's all right. We're huddled around this fire, sat on this soggy mattress, looking at the fire.
Yeah.
On the walls were the words "gong."
Gong. Yeah. Planet Gong.
Planet Gong.
Because Swab and Herbs were into slightly more progressed prog rock.
Yeah.
They were into like the extreme ends of prog
rock. Yeah.
Planet Gong, Flying Teapot.
Yeah.
Is that got Planet Gong album? I don't know.
Yeah. Radio Norman, the Flying Teapot, I think.
That's right. Something. Yeah, they were into into that.
They were big into Gong.
Yeah.
And obviously they came here to listen to Gong in their heads previously. and we were sat around the fire, and then Eddie started talking about the children of the corn.
Children of the Corn. Is that Stephen King?
Yeah, it was.
It's a film or something, isn't it? And we heard a weird noise outside, didn't we?
Yeah.
Like a whistling noise.
We're coming for you.
It's called a Cthulhu.
We're coming for you.
All making sanity rolls at this point.
Shh, we're coming for you. Shh, we're coming for
What
you.
did we call it? The Whistling Women of Newton
The
Le Willows.
whistling, wasn't it? And it was like some kind of valve thing, wasn't it? Going.
It was some sort of farm. Yeah, it was a farm thing, like a little windmill thing in the field. Ultimately, it was making this strange whistling noise. But the more we sat in the bungalow, ruin. The more we sat in the ruin and listened to this, the more it kind of started to really freak us out, didn't it?
Shh, where are you?
Did we go out? Did we end up going out? But it took us. I just remember it took us hours to pluck up the courage to go out. And in the end, we all go together. It was like Friday the 13th or Halloween, wasn't it? Yeah. You know, we're all going to get bumped off one by one with this weird whistling noise. And we went out, and in the field there was this kind of, I don't know what it was, sort of, I'm not a farmer.
In a typical John Carpenter thing, that we would be killed for having impure thoughts about the woman.
The girl at the petrol station, yeah, that's it. We're kind of asking for it because we're having impure thoughts, yeah.
We're coming for
Blood splattered Mars bars from the.
We're coming for We managed to get some sleep, I think. And
Well, you say sleep, but me and you lying on that double bed side by side with every spring sticking into our body. I remember it being a borderline hallucinogenic experience where I couldn't sleep, but I was drifting in and out of sleep, feeling these stabbing pains, thinking, why am I lying on this? Then remembering the cockroaches and thinking, I know why I'm lying on it.
yeah, I remember waking up with the pattern of the springs on my face.
Yes.
And
It had gone from we tried to reenact RuneQuest or D&D. I think what we did reenact was called Cthulhu.
it was like
I think we all left with our sanity slightly dented.
Yeah. And do you know why I think that? Is my only real vivid memory of it. I've got lots of memories of it because it was a very intense experience.
Yeah, it was, yeah. A bit odd.
But it's waking up with the springs on my face, a bit of dribble. And for some reason, Howard Jones's song, I'd like to get to know you well. I'd like to get to know you well. I'd like to get to know you well. Going over
Not his
and over.
best one. I mean, if he has a best one, that's not it. But go on.
It was going through my head when I woke up.
Yeah.
And I saw Herbs, and he was stealing me corned beef from the wardrobe.
Yeah.
And he just went, That happened, didn't it?
That did happen, yeah. Because I remember waking up and seeing that as well. And thinking, what am I doing here? What am I doing here? I think we all thought that. The only person who didn't think that was Herbs. The rest of us. And I think me, you, Eddie and Carl were all waiting. I don't know who it was. I think it was Eddie, actually.
Yeah.
Who said, we're going home.
Yeah.
So we'd gone on the Friday. We'd endured the Friday night. And on the Saturday kind of afternoon, me and you had been saying, I want to go home, I can't stand this anymore.
Yeah.
It's horrendous. And I think it was Eddie who said, I think we should go. And me and you then pounced on it and thought, I agree.
Go. Yeah, let's go.
So we did, didn't we? We caught the bus back to Bolton from Newton Le Willows.
Yeah, and that was a bit of an epiphany as well.
Well, that was slightly another. I think probably another D6 sanity loss after the couple of D10s we'd lost with the Whistling Women and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
Where the bus back from Newton Le Willows was Saturday night, wasn't it? By the time we got on it was like 6-7 o'clock Saturday night, and Newton Le Willows, it's fair to say, it's a bit posh, isn't it?
Yeah.
Posh. And as the bus was going through Newton Le Willows, all these attractive young people got on, didn't they? A bit slightly, maybe a couple of years older than us, but very attractive. Particularly very attractive young women got on. And we were a bunch of 16-year-old lads, looking essentially like vagrants, looking like covered in smoke, stinking at the back of this bus.
I'd forgotten to take toilet paper. I don't think anybody's got toilet paper.
We didn't take toilet paper, did
We didn't think it through, did we? Did not think it through. Oh dear. But I remember sitting there and thinking, oh, you really need to, this has not been a good idea. This is all slightly embarrassing, isn't it? And all these people done up to the nines on a Saturday night, all smelling nice and looking great, and look at you, back of the bus, looking like something the cat's dragged in.
Yeah.
Never, and that was the end of our Larping experience. It was. That we never went there again. We went back to the old pencil and paper tabletop role, but stayed there ever since.
Yeah, we have. But I do think that was probably the beginning of the end, though. Something changed. In that we started to question our life choices. And I think the deep freeze, it sort of started that.
Gradually, it took a while, didn't it? But yeah, another four or so years, and then it kicked in, hadn't it? Properly.
I don't know. I think it was shorter than that. I think it was within that year, because this was
86?
85.
85, 86. So yeah, maybe started to creep in a bit. I think what certainly started to happen then was we became less obsessed with it.
Yeah,
and we played less.
Yeah,
I think after that.
I don't think I ever saw Herbs again.
Never saw him again. No, never saw Carl again either after that.
No,
completely freaked him out. Yeah. And this is our predictions that this is the future of role playing. Thank God it wasn't, because I don't want to do it again.
I know that LARPing is still a thing, isn't it? Because in the 90s, the whole Vampire of the Masquerade was all based on that, wasn't it? And people do that free-form stuff. And so, although we had this idea that it was going to be a massive thing, it wasn't like that, but it did go in that direction.
I suppose you could say to some extent see things kind of melded together a little bit, didn't they? So LARPing had an influence on role playing, didn't it?
Yeah,
because it's certainly true. I think that when role playing started, you never encountered the kind of ammy-drammy style, did you? That is, and I suppose maybe it is that the LARPing thing fed into that and created that kind of style of playing it. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, more dramatic.
Yeah.
Would you do it?
LARPing.
But if somebody said to it, let me give you a pitch. You said no already.
Said no.
You once said no to Powered by the Apocalypse, Hero Quest, and all that story stuff.
Yeah.
So imagine somebody said to us, "Come and do that. You've had a better experience. You got covered in silly string and glitter and nearly killed by a baseball bat."
Yes.
It's not like that anymore.
No.
Why don't you come along and we'll show you what it's like, free-forming and doing that kind of acting, like you're trapped in a room and how do you meet each other and that kind. I don't know what they do.
I'd say, is the girl from the petrol station still there? Is she John? Is she grown up? Attractive older woman still there? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if it's... When I think back now, I do think what possessed us, because as I say, my experience of LARPing up to that point was watching the treasure trap demonstration at Games Day, which was essentially, and it's no reflection on treasure trap, I'm sure people enjoyed it, but it was rubbish. It was just people running at each other with swords, and yet somehow I thought, this is the future. But in a way, when I think back, it looked anything but the future.
Yeah.
But somehow you were dragged along with the current of it, that that was what people were doing, so we better try it, hadn't we, to see what it's like. And it's not very good, so I'm not doing it again. I'm quite happy sat on a chair with a piece of paper and some funny shaped dice. Thank you very much.
Yeah, let's carry on doing that.
Yeah.
Right, thanks Blythe.
Okay.
Goodbye.
I like this from Killer. A note on idiots. Veteran Killer players have a term they use for a player who, emboldened by the possession of a new water gun, goes around squirting everyone he meets. That term is idiot. Yes, the only way to kill your friends with a water pistol is to be mature about it. Ovs. There's more from Jamie next time as he faces the game's master screen and talks in more depth about his game books and career in writing. Also next time, we'll be doing our annual review of our year in gaming and the Groggy Awards. Watch out on Twitter and thegrognardfiles.com to see how you can make a vote this time. The Grog Pod will always be free, but we have a Patreon to allow listeners to give us a tip each month to cover the costs and encourage us to continue. We also use the Patreon campaign to fund additional projects. Earlier this year, we opened the Grog Locker, a private space to share PDF resources with Patreon supporters. Dropping in there next month are the notes that we use for the Grogmeet OSR event. Steve Ray, Sam Vale, Rick Knott, Dr. RPG Griff, and overseen by the old Scouse role-player himself, Neil Benson, devised a table-spanning adventure for the deep space horror RPG Mothership. You can read the mayhem for yourselves when that drops in the locker in December. Also appearing in there soon is the missing page from the Thieves World supplement, in collaboration with What Would the Smart Party Do podcast. I've also set a date for the virtual Grogmeet 2020, where Patreon supporters can join Grogmeet GMs online to replay the games they presented at Grogmeet in Manchester, or to join in a test run of one-shots that they've prepared for the summer convention season. Put the 17th and 18th of April 2020 in your diary. That date will also be the launch of the next Grogzine, slightly different from the previous editions as it's going to be a social history of RPGs. Thanks to all of you who've pitched ideas so far. I'll be in touch soon. Guidelines will be on the page at grognardfiles.com with a sort of deadline for the end of January 2020. We're very grateful to all the patrons who support us. It really does help and encourage us, so thank you. There are some new people who've joined over the past couple of months, and sitting in a comfy armchair listening to this are Steve Powley, Jeremy Gilbert, Andrew McLaren and Ludwig Schabant. Putting their feet up in a fancy poof are Matt Willing, Jez, Nick West and John Power. Thank you to all. At the sofa so good level, I like to roll on a relevant table apparently at random and award a virtual gift. This time I've gone for the killer weapons table and given them the opportunity to assassinate me. Martin Cookson, who travelled from Luxembourg to join us at Grogmeet, he's decided to increase his pledge and add a sofa to his poof. He gets to try and assassinate me with a deadly envelope. At the very top level of the Armchair Adventurers, Georges Sterner has put his feet up in the room of role-playing rambling on one of those high-backed chairs with wings and a little fancy rug. He gets to kill me with confetti eggshells. Right, that's another Grog Pod in your box, and one that's reawakened some nightmares for me. Adios, amigos.